The Symphony is back. Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Duke Oishi.
In our show tonight, we'll cover the long-awaited and happy return of symphonic music to Hawaii.
We'll talk to some of the principals of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, and we'll talk to some of the musicians too.
We started out by visiting with our ThinkTech music host, David Austin, to get a short history of the ups and downs of the symphony over the past couple of years. What went wrong with the earlier symphony?
Well, I think it's somewhat difficult to say specifically what went wrong. I know a lot of symphonies in the United States right now are having a lot of problems. Even, the venerable old Philadelphia Orchestra, hundreds of years of history, much like our symphony, which has a really, really long history, really old history, they went bankrupt. Detroit Symphony, Houston Symphony, City Opera Orchestra. And I think in each of those circumstances, you have, sometimes, you'll have an endowment that's been mismanaged. You'll have the fact that the market has been lousy and therefore the investments have done badly. You will also have problems like, for example, there's just not enough interest that's being sparked in the community. And I think possibly in the situation with the Honolulu Symphony, what you may have had was a sort of it seems like a disconnect between the administration of the orchestra and donors. Now, I don't know if that's a fair assessment to make, but it seems like people really wanted to give money. And importantly, I think the times that I went to the symphony, the place was packed. There's not a lack of interest in the community. But it seems that moving forward, what the orchestra may want to consider is trying to tap into that, It's not necessarily that everyone in the orchestra has, $1 million to give, but to generate that level of enthusiasm, even if people donated small amounts of money, and then connecting that with actual programs that benefit the orchestra, I think is absolutely vital. How you do that is a different story. And I think that having a qualified group of managers or directors that understand specifically the needs of an arts-based organization is probably the best thing. Honolulu Symphony was the only game in town, and Hawaii Symphony is the only game in town, and that's why it's even more important that we continue to help the orchestra grow and move forward.
Then we looked at the footage we had of some of the musicians last year, after the new symphony board was formed, but before it was clear they could raise enough money to carry on.
I joined the Honolulu Symphony in August of 1981, so 30 years now.
Okay, and
August of 1985.
And from what I hear, you two knew each other before you started.
We did.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time.
Since 1968. We grew up in the same hometown and studied with the same teacher.
And where was that?
That was Urbana and Champaign, Illinois, actually twin cities.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. It actually is.
And were you sort of in high school together at the same time?
No, because he was in Urbana and I was in Champaign.
Oh, okay.
But we were in college together at the University of Illinois.
That's true.
For part of the time.
Yes, we were.
And even played in the university orchestra.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing,
It's
actually.
amazing. And so your earliest education obviously was in France. Where did you go to conservatory?
Well, when they refer to the conservatory in France, they refer to the Paris National Conservatory. They also have another one in Lyon. So they refer to actually those both schools. I just happened to go to Paris. And it's a little bit different also in the educational system in that you don't have to finish high school to go there.
Okay.
So I did go there. I was still fairly young. I was actually 12. I happened to meet a teacher who taught at Indiana University.
Oh, wow.
And so he invited me to further my studies there, which I did after getting a scholarship. Now, Indiana University is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but for music school is a very renowned school.
It's very different being a section player and a concertmaster.
It is in some ways, yeah. Concertmaster, you don't go to a technical school for concertmaster.
Right.
It's very kind of in that gray area. A lot of intangibles.
Is from the opening to Porgy and Bess, which is the great opera by George Gershwin. And this is actually probably the most famous and important xylophone piece that all percussionists need to learn if you're going to play in an orchestra. So composers like to use a snare drum, especially if they want to create the effect of a marching band or of a military or an army or battle kind of sound. So like in 1812 Overture, there's very famous snare drum sounds coming in. Composers like to use tambourine, especially if they want to give the impression of the sound of they want to make something sound like the Middle Eastern music or maybe Spanish music. So like in the opera Carmen, there's a famous tambourine part that starts off like this. I think in a way as an artist, particularly an artist who is focused on sound, I think ideally we listen differently to the sounds around us. It really allows you to focus a lot more on something that I think most people don't pay attention to.
How is it playing in the symphony together and being married?
We're each in our own separate section.
Sure.
So, we go and goes off to the wind section, I'm in the string section, and we have our own even little areas of the concert hall backstage. So, once we're there on stage, I don't really see him till the end of the rehearsal, 2.5 hours later. Even on the break, when we have a break, we're all talking and visiting with our own different colleagues.
Back when I was a child, I was taken by my mother to hear the Honolulu Symphony at the Shell concerts and the kid concerts, and so I kind of grew up with hearing them. This one comes from the year 1740 by a man named Andrea Castagnari, and it's a lovely instrument that I found a few years back. explain to the kids that there are a lot of types of music, and when we have the children learn Suzuki and they're doing, it's just a stepping stone of little pieces that you build up slowly at a time until you get up to a point where there is more enjoyment because you have mastery.
Yeah.
And mastery comes in very, very, very tiny steps.
All right, this is a little Strauss. This is a concerto in D. Richard Strauss wrote later in his life. I was fortunate enough to have played this concerto with the orchestra in November of 2008. Well, the oboe, of course, is a double reed instrument. It's related to the bassoon in the symphony orchestra. Versions of the oboe can be found in different cultures around the world. In the Middle East, there's an instrument called the zurna, which is a double reed instrument that sounds a little bit less, I guess you'd say, polished than a contemporary oboe. It's sometimes also called a snake charmer's pipe. When I do education shows, the children are always fascinated by how I describe a gentleman who'd be sitting playing a snake charmer's pipe, and so I would play a tune that goes something like this. A lot of the classical and romantic composers, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Schumann, Schubert, they loved the exotic plaintive quality of the instrument and wrote many beautiful melodies for the oboe.
So how long have each of you been with the symphony?
Well, I came out here in 1997, so it's been 14 years.
Okay.
And I've been here since 2005.
Terrific. And why did each of you choose to play the double bass? What was it about the instrument that kind of drew you to it?
For me, I started on bass guitar, playing rock and roll. My brother played guitar. I wanted to play with him. Then I saw some jazz upright bass players. I wanted to do that. And then I wanted to learn some technique, so I studied some classical bass technique, and it just evolved to the point where that's what I focused on.
Terrific.
Yeah, and for me, my dad is an electric guitar player, and he'd always come into my schools and play with his band, and I remember when I was in preschool, he brought an upright bass player with him one day.
Okay.
And so I saw it for the first time, and I couldn't believe it. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So fast forward to when I was in 7th grade, everybody took 2 weeks of a string instrument to try it out. And of course, I knew I wanted to play bass, and that's when I first picked one up for myself, and I never put it back down. That was it.
Silly stuff like that. That's a really typical trombone song. This is Lass's Trombone, Trombone Greatest Hits right there. For people that are familiar with us from the orchestra, we tend to have a fairly loud voice in the orchestra. We play these big, powerful moments like that. So this is typical trombone power. But trombone can also be a very sexy instrument, as it's written for, say, in the French style of music. We have some great moments such as. And some of the greatest composers chose some of the most solemn and beautiful moments for the voice of the trombone. I think it has a very vocal quality when we're not playing it in the extremes. When the trombone's hushed down a little bit, it's very, very delicate and beautiful. And Mozart chose the trombone in his Requiem as a voice. So it's Judgment Day, but then there's an angel sounds a trumpet, and all the souls that are saved are called to heaven. So the trombone is chosen at this moment to announce that.
Why did you pick the harp?
I wanted to play harp since I was about 3 years old. My uncle is an organist, and he would have a harpist frequently play with him at church. And my dad started saying around when I was 3, "Don't you think that's a pretty instrument? Wouldn't you like to learn how to play that?" So in 2nd grade, I started piano lessons, but harp was always my goal. And in 7th grade, they cashed in all their insurance policies and bought me this gem.
And this is the very same harp.
The
very same harp.
Then my teacher at the time in Allentown, Pennsylvania, said that I would be able to pay them back with the efforts that I would, if I continued with scholarships or whatever, and they could buy their insurance policies back. So that's what happened.
Then we spoke with Ken Robbins of the new Symphony Board about what's happened since then, and asked him to tell us about the concert, which has been scheduled for March 4th.
Well, I can't tell you how wonderful it is to be sitting here talking about what is as opposed to what if. It's been, golly, close to a year and a half that a group of 8 of us have been meeting to reach this point 2 weeks away from our very first concert. It's going to be a great concert. We're starting with Weber's Overture to Oberon, then Mozart's lyrical, magnificent Concerto No. 20, and then a real rouser as a conclusion, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. So I can't think of 3 more glorious pieces to kick off the inaugural season of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra than what we're going to be having on March 4th, Sunday, and then the following Tuesday, March 6th. Thereafter, we have a magnificent series of concerts. We have Brahms' First Piano Concerto, Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, on Dvorak Cello Concerto. We've been able to line up, with the help of Joanne Folletta, our artistic advisor, just an extraordinary series of concerts. And we're going to have Matt Kattengood back. Matt is going to be heading up our pop series, which are scheduled for the convention center. The acoustics we have learned are fantastic. The parking is terrific. And we're going to conclude the season at the Waikiki Shell with a series of pop concerts there. That'll be in May and June. We're going to be announcing the Pops series very soon. We've got the dates booked at the convention center at the Waikiki Shell. And Matt is working diligently now with Steve Maunder, our president, who we're just thrilled to have here. If anybody wishes to purchase tickets, you can call the Symphony box office, which is located at the Hawaii Opera Theater at 593-9468. You can also visit the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra.com website to purchase tickets and to learn as much as you wish to know about the orchestra. We're constantly updating our website. Again, it's www.hawaiisymphonyorchestra.com.
March 4th is only a few days away, and this is the opportunity for us to support the new Hawaii Symphony as never before. So let's get excited about symphonic music in Hawaii. Let's go to that concert and celebrate the return with a resounding ovation. And let's plan to go to all the concerts in the future and keep it alive, not only for us, but for all the generations to come.
The point is simple. We need to preserve the passion and power of symphonic music in our lives and community. We're at a turning point, and now is the time we all need to step up. Hawaii will be a better place with the return of symphonic music, and it would be a great loss if we lose it. It's up to us, you and me. See you on March 4th for sure. Let's do this together.
Now for our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. weekday drive time radio series on KGU 760 AM continues this week, covering business, Asia, technology for sure, energy, the arts, including music, and government. Tune into 760 AM every weekday at 4 p.m. and raise your awareness on ThinkTech Radio.
On March 22nd, the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and ThinkTech will present a luncheon panel program called Finding Our Future in Kaka'ako, a look at the projects and prospects in Kaka'ako today. Sign up for this program on hvca.org. And now, here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
The surprising thing about this article to me was the fact that we're talking about a huge number of jobs that require special skills in science and technology are going unfilled. Whereas there's still high unemployment, 14 million, I don't know what the latest number is. There were 3.2 million science jobs that they just can't find people for. And the question is, well, why is that happening? Some people argue that, well, that the extended unemployment payouts are keeping people out of the job market because they have more time to search for the best job, the best fit. The fact that so many people are underwater on their mortgage, they can't really sell their house and move to a new location where there might be a good job. But the overall assessment is that we just don't have enough skilled workers out there. At least 50%, if not more, of the PhD positions are filled by foreign students. And then, of course, they can't stay because of our immigration law, and they're basically kicked out.
We have to move from old generation jobs to new generation jobs. And that whatever it takes, we have to train our own people in science and engineering. We have to incentivize them, motivate them one way or the other to get that training, and then they'll be able to participate in that pool of jobs that are going wanting.
There are no strings attached to the safety net. You can sit there now, I don't know how many years, 2 years, and take unemployment with all these extensions, and nobody's really saying, well, yeah, you apply for jobs, but there ought to be some requirement to go back and get some education training, some help to do that, so that a person has a better shot at some of these unfilled jobs, or we're just going to continue to lose our competitive edge.
I think we're at the tipping point for that now. And it's very important that not only the government, but people in general realize where we are and what we have to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Thanks to the Scheidler Family Foundation, which supports a number of educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including ThinkTech.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Miko on Maui and Helco on the Big Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is the Senior Executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii. Okay, Duke, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Duke does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
You bet, Jay. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Jay Fidell. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech.
I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.